back, everyone. I'm Steve Gifford, and with me again is Brandi Mandato, candidate for State Senate for the 34th District in Connecticut. Now, the 34th District, if you look at it on a map, looks long and skinny and very small, but there's an amazing diversity inside the district. You go from rural areas, you've got guava vineyards in Wallingford, where if you squint, you can tell yourself you're in Napa. You've got farms and cows in Durham and in North Branford. You've got kind of urban areas in East Haven and Wallingford and North Haven to a certain extent. You got a lot of suburbs, a lot of variety in the district. About around 100,000 people there. So there's a lot. Obviously, people have a lot of concerns, a lot of issues they're looking to have addressed by the state government. What are some of the things that, Brandi, that you're focused on as a candidate for things that need improvement, both in the district and the state as a whole?
Thanks, Steve. I think as diverse as the district is and as diverse as the community is, one thing that we're hearing over and over again is that we need our state government to work for the people. So that looks like affordability, accessibility, and impact. So in terms of affordability, that can mean housing, that can mean being able to afford rent, that can mean at the grocery store, it means our UI bills. So a lot of conversations about why a private company providing a public resource, instead of absorbing a hit and having it covered by their insurance or having it impact their record profits, is being put back on taxpayers in Connecticut that are already struggling to pay their bills. So wanting the folks in Hartford to come up with solutions that don't continue to put the burden on already struggling citizens of the state.
No, that makes sense. So while we're talking about energy costs there, what are some of the things that could have been handled differently with this rate increase, you think, either by the legislature or by the governor?
Yeah, I think, again, coming at it from an approach on how this is going to impact ratepayers and how this is going to impact community. So instead of coming up with an enterprise level solve that requires additional income from large companies, we said we will add this into other corporate subsidies, call it a public benefit, and then put it back on ratepayers. And what that does is something that we have seen over the last few years. It puts some of the people with the most barriers, some of the people that are living in poverty, and pins them against people that are struggling to stay in the middle class, instead of asking for other folks with incredible means to contribute more, to pay their fair share, and to cover those costs.
And I think also the board that approved the rate increase, those members are appointed by the governor and approved by the state senate. So
that's right.
It's another point of influence that the Senate could have on it.
That's right. And I think it isn't unusual right now for many of our elected officials to be in their roles based on that influence and connection. And so I think it's a rare thing that someone that does not have those political connections is raising their hand to represent working people and to go to Hartford and serve.
No, and I'm always shocked at the number of members of the legislature who work for Eversource.
Yeah.
Less so UI for some reason, but Eversource, there's always a handful there, and it's a just shocking conflict of interest. Yeah. You mentioned at the top housing. Can you speak a little more about both housing stock in Connecticut, what the what the struggle is, what the need is there?
So housing, we've all lived through sort of the post-COVID era where we had our inventory sort of evaporate, both due to people moving from large cities into Connecticut and to private investors just scooping up real estate and then renting it out. And so that has caused even further housing imbalance and inaccessibility. So I have younger siblings who have hardworking, full-time jobs. Both of my younger brothers have dual income situations, and they can't afford to purchase a house right now. That wasn't the case 30 or 40 years ago. And so the idea that people can move into, and there's been a lot of conversation about investing in real estate. And for me, what that means is giving everyone an opportunity to own their home or to their space, to make it their own. And instead, what that's looked like are very, very few companies purchasing all of the real estate and leaving the rest of us out to dry.
What do you see on the anything on the either zoning side or on the building side as a barrier to the housing, to building, to creating more housing?
Yeah, so there isn't anything at the state level that provides real guidance on how to build and provide accessibility. A lot of it comes down to region and town or city, and there isn't sort of an affordable housing plan for the state. There are very few states that have that, but many of them have more aggressive stances on how to create affordable housing. And when we talk about affordable housing, I think that's sort of a buzzword that makes people nervous. What it really means is your nephew can afford to live in the neighborhood. Your parents who are now retired and on a fixed income can stay in their home through their retirement. And so I think that we just have to recognize that the politicization of all of it, the way that we talk and think about access, it means access for all of us. It means better opportunity for all of us.
So opportunity transitions perfectly. Last time we talked, you were talking some about your professional background of helping people get higher education. I know education is a focus of yours. You have kids in North Haven Public Schools right now. Can you talk some about where you see the state doing well in education and where you see some of the opportunities?
I think the state is doing well in terms of the fact that it has been able to retain some pretty incredible educators. I talk to teachers across the district. Many of my family members are either teachers or paras or have been. Some of my closest friends are educators. These are people that are so committed to the work, who stuck with it through COVID, where we really put our teachers and educators through hell and asked them to show up in ways and then not compensate them. So the fact that we still have, even through a historic shortage in terms of educators and teachers, incredibly talented, dedicated professionals in this state, we're very lucky. And then I think there is a lot of opportunity for improvement. So I live here in North Haven. I have a daughter that goes to kindergarten. Her elementary school has not been, the infrastructure has not been invested in decades. It is a very old building. There are parts of it that are falling apart. It doesn't have air conditioning.
Ours either.
Particularly in a time when we're seeing, historic highs in temperature when the kids are back in school. And our budgets are so tight because they continue to put the full burden on taxpayers. And we don't bring home a lot of money from the state across the district. We could be doing much better there. And so we're kicking a can in terms of education infrastructure and innovation and competitiveness for our graduates. We're kicking that can down the road and it leads in a cliff. So we have to come up with a more innovative, thoughtful way to leverage federal dollars, state dollars, to think about how we get some of the large corporations in the state to invest in the public system, knowing that this is their talent pipeline.
Can you talk a little more about what that looks like in terms of of an equitable distribution of state money for the districts in the school districts in the 34th?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, a majority of our funding for schools comes from taxpayers, property taxes, which means that districts that have more money have more access to resources and tools for education. At the state level, we tend to allocate funds based on need, which is an approach that allows all of our students to have a similar opportunity. The money that comes from the state is incredibly limited. So what that would mean for me is making sure that every student has an investment that gets them where they need to be. It means that every educator has the tools and resources they need to effectively serve their students. And I think sometimes we pretend like a fully funded, robust, innovative public school system is an option when it is the most precious thing as a country we have. investing in our young people, investing in our talent pools, our labor market, providing opportunity for people to become their best selves. If we don't invest in that, then what are we doing?
Now, I know you have parents still living locally. What are some of the challenges you see for seniors, and what are some of the things that you think the state can be doing to help with those?
Well, my parents would be so mad that you referred to them as seniors. So my mom and my stepdad are retired, and they live on a fixed income, and they have a whole lot of kids and a whole lot of grandkids. And the only reason that they're able to retire, again, is because my stepdad was part of a union, but that money only goes so far. And so we see people struggling to stay in their own homes. We see people struggling to, after working their entire lives, live a really beautiful retirement. And when you've committed that much to a company, to a corporation, to work, it should be an expectation that you're able to really live out your retirement in a beautiful way. And then my dad, who was not part of a union for a very long time, I don't know that he will ever be able to retire comfortably. And we see more and more of that. We see folks who their retirement doesn't give them enough to pay their bills, so they're working additional jobs. We see folks who are relying on food banks just to feed themselves. And this sort of nonprofit philanthropic safety net, it's good that it exists. And this is a policy choice. The fact that we have seniors that are living in poverty is a policy choice. The fact that we have families that can't afford to stay in the communities where they grew up, that's a policy choice. And we can make better choices.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, as you talk to people in the district, as you look at the state, what are some of the other things that you look at as being critical to address as a state senator for this district?
I think one of the challenges of being a state legislator is recognizing that this is all connected, right? It's great to focus, and housing is related to healthcare, is related to the workforce system, and business development is related to education. And so I think there are themes in terms of how I will approach this role. Again, accessibility. It's great to have health insurance. Health insurance isn't accessible if you can't get your teeth worked on. I was at the dentist the other day, and someone called to see what was remaining on their insurance for the year, and it was half a crown was what was left on their insurance. That's not accessible healthcare. Our bodies, our brains, our teeth, our eyes are all connected. It's all healthcare, and we need to be able to access it. Reproductive healthcare is healthcare. Gender-affirming care is healthcare. And I'm proud to be in a state like Connecticut that understands that and protects it. And because of the wealth divide, it's not accessible to everyone. In terms of mental health care, I think this is a priority for me across areas of focus. So when we're talking about occupation, particularly in a society that has lived through COVID, we have healthcare providers, educators, first responders that are still reeling with the effects of living through that and don't have time or money to access mental health support. We're seeing a mental health crisis with our young people. We have to address this. Or we are going to lose folks, and people are going to struggle and suffer, and everyone deserves to thrive.
Well, on that, ended right on a hopeful note.
Yeah,
there.
It did.
So, Brandi Mandato, thank you so much for joining us on NHTV, and we'll be back again in the near future with more with Brandi Mandato, candidate for State Senate for the 34th District. Thank you so much for joining us.